Welcome to the Vision Perfect video trainer for Viper Leaderboard. The purpose of this video is to provide a quick start guide to using Viper Leaderboard, and for a more complete understanding of all of the functionality and capabilities, you should go to the Help menu and select the user guide, which can be printed. It's only 35 pages in length, and it provides a much more detailed description of the capabilities. When you're using Viper Leaderboard in the cloud, all of the work to create the background graphics, any logos that you may be using, all that work is being done in the cloud. So you need to move any graphics files that you'll be using for displays to the cloud. When you start up your cloud session, you will have an icon at the bottom of the screen, a file folder icon. Clicking that icon will enable you to browse your local drive or network drives, where you can find any files that you need to be using for your video displays, and then going to the My Documents folder, which will be your document folder in the cloud. You can then create any subfolders that you need and paste those graphics that you'll be using into those folders. Those graphics will then be available as you are working in Viper Leaderboard to design scoreboard, leaderboard, starting board displays. To start using Viper Leaderboard, click on the Launch Viper Leaderboard icon. When Viper Leaderboard opens, you'll have the option to select the type of display that you want to set up or start. You can set up displays for leaderboards, scoreboards, starting boards, and you can do a slideshow. For this video, we're going to simply work with scoreboard display types, and all display types work very similar. So we're going to select a scoreboard type and select OK to go to the event selector screen, where events that have occurred within the last 14 days, within a 14-day range, 7 days in advance, 7 days behind, will appear in the list. To see all of the events that are in your database, select the Show All Events button, and a list of all events will appear in the list. Once you have selected an event, you would choose whether to sort the scores in the event by either gross score or net score, and proceed, and the grid will open, where you can resize it to a size that you can begin to work with for creating a layout. When the default display opens, you should right-click on the screen, and the first thing that you should do would be to either select or create a new layout. If you select Layout, you can choose one from the list of layouts that are available, or you can create a new layout and create a new layout name. You cannot change the default gross or net leaderboard or scoreboard display designs, so before you can really start working with a layout, you either need to select a different one from the list, or create your own display by creating a new one. Once you have selected an existing layout or created a new layout, you can begin to work with the design of the display. When you right-click on the screen, you will get an option list of things that you can change within the display. The first item in the list is a design mode selector, which you should select to stop the grid and stop screen. This enables you to more easily make design changes to the layout. Right-clicking on the green again, you'll see that there are a number of options for text fields that can be added to the display. There's 3 text fields that can be added. There are graphics selectors for graphics 1 and 2, a ticker property to add a ticker of text scrolling across the screen, the background graphics, which is actually the background photos in this example, where you can pick any photos for the background or create slides with PowerPoint and use the backgrounds of those slides. The event name property would be to add the event name to the field and to be able to change the fonts and the colors and the look of the event name. And the grid properties, which are the names of the players, scores, and all of the capabilities that you have for the grid within the score display. Looking first at the graphics properties, picking one of the 2 graphics fields, you'll see that there is a selector that you can browse out and find files to add to the graphics field or the graphics window that you have placed in your display. Or you can use the option to select all files from a folder, and using this utility you can browse to a folder, select the folder, and the utility will just get all of the files that you have put in that folder. The purpose for that would be if you, for example, wanted to include a lot of digital photos that you may have taken during the event. You can place all of those photos into a folder, use this utility to select that folder, and it will just automatically load up all of the files that are in there, no matter how many there are. Once you have selected files, either using the folder selector, which will automatically drop files down into the display list of files, or if you have browsed and selected files individually and then used upload files to put them in the list. Once those files are in the list, then you can use the up and down arrows to change the position of the files, or if you use a naming convention, just numbering file names, they'll sort alphanumerically automatically. But once you have all the files in the list that you want, check the box that says select all images, and then selecting save will then drop all of those selected files into the graphics window, whichever window you have. All of the fields that you have in display can be positioned any way that you want by simply clicking on the field. This happens to be the graphics 2 window. This is the graphics 1 window, and you can position them any way that you want. The grid itself also can be positioned any way that you want. Clicking on the top of it will give you sizer windows to enable you to resize it, and you can click and drag it to move it, to position it anywhere that you want within the display. Again, right-clicking and choosing the grid, you'll see that there are a number of columns that can be included in the display. In this case, we've only got a few selected. We've got the player name, gross score, gross place, net score, net place, but you have many fields that you can include in the display. Each field, or column actually, that you select to be included in the grid has a number of options for adjusting it. Selecting the Edit button will allow you to change the text for the field. It will allow you to change the order. In other words, the order of where it's positioned in the grid, with the lowest numbers being on the left side of the grid and the higher numbers being on the right side of the grid. Really, it doesn't matter which numbers you use, just so that whichever columns that you have got selected are in an order that you want. So we've got the player name in the lowest position column, gross score, gross place, net score, net place, being in that order in the grid. But just simply clicking on any one of those numbers would allow you to change that field after you've hit the Edit button, and you can click on it and change the number to anything that you want. Once you have made changes, you need to select the Update to update those changes. The other control that you have for managing how the columns appear in the grid is the Select button, and when you hit the Select button, you will get adjusting capabilities on the right side of the screen for changing the fonts and the colors and the size of the fonts. And each column has two adjuster controls. One is for the header, to adjust how the header appears above the column, whether it's transparent or solid, and again the fonts and the colors for that. And the column selector would then allow you to adjust the text, the font size, and the colors within the text display of the column, including things like being able to alternate row colors if you wanted to have solid backgrounds for the field that you're working with, the column that you're working with, and the ability to put an outline around the field or the column field in the column, and set the color and the size of the width of the line. All of these capabilities are further described in the user guide to get more specific on how to make adjustments. The column size field is an important field to understand, as this field sets the width of each column, and the size is relative to the total size of the column. So in other words, in this case we've got the player name field set to 59%, so whatever fields that we select to appear in the grid, the player name field is going to be 59% of that width. And if you see, if I choose the gross score, for example, we have the column width set to 10%. So your column width totals, column size totals, should total up to 100% for however many fields that you have selected, however many columns you've selected for the display. There are a number of other controls available to you for how the grid appears in the display. One is the grid transition, whether you are scrolling, meaning that the players' names and scores are just going to scroll from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen. Whether you select manual, in which case they don't move until you use the up and down arrows, and then they would move up and down. Or other transitions, which give you a number of options for how to transition one group of teams to another group of teams, and you can select the number of teams to show. So in this case we might have 5 teams in each group that will appear on the screen, and then the transitions choices are things like dissolving, where the players' names would dissolve and then speckle back in, or random bars, where they might slide off of the screen in random bars and slide back in with random bars, and you just have to kind of fool around with the different types of transitions to see what they look like. And again, they would be described more clearly in the user guide. We have just set this current display to scrolling. When you're using scrolling, you can set the speed of how fast the names will scroll. Also, with one of the transition options, you can also set the speed for how fast the group of names will transition in and out, and how fast it'll change from one group of names to the next group of names. The other control that you have is how the team players will appear within each team, whether you have the names appearing vertically, meaning one team player name on top of another, or horizontally, meaning the team names will be beside each other, and when you select horizontally, they'll just automatically roll into another line when there's not enough room on one line for all of the player names. In this case, we have set vertical. There's also a setting for grid transparency, which allows you to kind of put a darker background behind the names on top of the photo, which makes it easier to read the names when you've got a light background, like a sand trap or a water hazard or something like that within the photo that is part of the background. Once you've made the changes that you need to make, then you would just hit the save button, and any changes that you have made will then appear in the grid. And if you're working with a layout, you need to then immediately save that layout. So when you select exit from the main menu and use the opportunity to save the grid changes if you haven't saved them already, you will then get a prompt asking you if you want to make this event active. If you say OK to make this event active, it will then post this event up on the cloud, where it can be available as a link on your website, or you can actually send a link directly to participants in the event. Any changes that you then make, whether you haven't entered all the scores yet or you haven't even started scoring, all of those changes will automatically update to the cloud, and will update the leaderboards that are being shown on any devices anywhere in the world. And this completes the quick start guide for Viper Leaderboard.